Hello, and welcome back to the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Arthur, PMW's Deputy Editor. Today's show is going to be a little different, however. It's going to be hosted by former guest and friend of the show, Paul Evans, the founder of Version, and he is going to be leading a conversation with three other guests, Supriya Dev-Purkayastha, the founder and CEO of Connect Growth, Tony Miller, the interim CMO of Direct Line Group, and Emily Roberts, the head of digital for the Responsible Marketing Advisory. Together, these four people are going to talk about the topics that are not being spoken about enough in marketing to Open 2026. So there's plenty to unearth over the next 45 minutes or so. And I should say that each of these four guests will also be joining us at Performance Marketing World Unlocked at the Business Design Centre in March. So for a little taste of some of the conversations you might hear at the event and to learn all about what you need to be worrying about for the 12 months ahead, I invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast.
Well, welcome listeners. This is quite an interesting one for you guys. My name is Paul. I'm the founder of a business called Version, which is a positioning studio. And I'm joined here as the guest host of Performance Marketing World's podcast with Emily and Supriya and Tony. All industry experts, and all the red thread that kind of runs between us is that we're all going to be speaking at the PMW Unlocked event in early March in what is only a couple of weeks or so for us now. So I hope we're all prepped. We've got our presentation slides. We're all in a good place. Yeah. And this is kind of like the warm-up effectively for the event. We are the warm-up for the event. So Joe and the team at PMW invited us here, hand-selected us, I might add, to give the listeners a bit of a preview on what they're going to expect from the event with our sessions. And we're just going to be able to have a good chat and kind of get stuck in and unpack them a little bit. So, with no further ado, I'm going to ask Emily to kick us off.
Sounds good. So I'm going to be at Performance Marketing World hosting a panel on all things accessible marketing. And this is a topic that I feel like is fairly new to a lot of people, especially in the industry. It won't be new to Supriya and myself as we're talking about it all day, every day. But when we talk about accessible advertising, we're talking about ensuring that captions are on ads, there's either audio description or that the ad has enough audio for the audience to understand. And also if it's a digital ad, it includes things like alt text. So essentially, if you're blind or deaf, then you can still understand the ad and you can get that message across. And at the moment in the industry, it's amazing how little this is being done. And I feel like once you're kind of aware of it, you start to really, really kind of, listen and to the ads for like key messages. There was, for instance, some of the Christmas ads didn't mention the supermarket name throughout the whole ad. So if you are blind, you have no idea what the supermarket is talking around.
You said kind of that it was a new topic really for the industry. Like, why do you say that? Because what you're saying makes so much sense. And you're like, how is that possible that we're only kind of waking up to this?
So ISBA created the Ad Accessibility Network, which was an initiative.
Shout out to Bobby Carley.
Which was an initiative started about 3 years ago. And that was where the largest brands in the industry were calling for action from broadcasters and like social media platforms to make ads a lot more accessible. And I think the key challenge is here, the advertisers can only do so much. Without the capabilities of the platforms and the broadcasters, they're not able to make ads accessible. So it takes a long time. It's very complicated. But we are slowly getting there and more people are hearing about it. I think the biggest challenge is the awareness piece. As soon as you start talking about it to people, they're like, well, this makes so
Perfect
much
sense.
sense. Like, why are we not doing this more?
Yeah.
And to kind of give you some stats on it. So the kind of audience we're talking about is the size of China. So that's 1.3 billion people. A quarter of the UK population is disabled, and the purple pound is worth about 274 billion in the UK. So if you're not doing that, you are massively missing out. And actually, we'll come on to performance in a bit, but obviously the performance is amazing once you start to include accessibility within your ads. There's a really good example that somebody was talking to me about around how pavement ramps were originally built for wheelchair access, but yet they then allowed people with luggage, people with prams, like all kinds of different people to enable them to get up and down the pavement.
Yeah.
And that is very much of accessibility as well. So 80% of Gen Zs watch TV with captions. And obviously another one that I kind of realised was when I was going to the pub to watch the football, at half time they'll always mute the ads. So if you don't have closed captions on your ads, you have no idea what it's saying, and that's another big audience. The challenge is you cannot measure the fact that these ads have sounds off, or that an audience is blind, and that's where we're missing out, and it comes back to your awareness piece.
So measurement is one of those key barriers, do you think, for the industry?
Yeah, I think TV, we're able to measure how many ads are accessible. In the ad accessibility network of all the brands on the steer code, 95% now have accessible ads. That's way less than half, though, if we're looking at the rest of the UK.
Yeah.
So there is measurement there. Digital's
a different
Yeah.
game. Part of the challenges is obviously measurement, but there's also understanding what needs to be accessible and what doesn't. So you asked the question, right? And Emily, you're going to know the numbers better than me. But one of the reasons why this feels like something new is because regulations have changed with regards to accessibility from an advertising perspective. And it hit broadcast first, right? So it hit radio and TV before digital came into context.
Yes, it's the European Accessibility Act. There's also one in the US now, but it's expanding more. And I really don't like to talk about the legislation, because actually it should just be this is really important for everybody, whether you're Gen Z, whether you're part of the ageing population. But there is now legislation, which means if you're not doing this, you can get fined for it.
But let's be honest, the reason why it is now something that brands are getting behind is because of legislation.
There's the carrot and stick here, right?
and that kind of is one of the things that I'm starting to think about as well when I think beyond accessibility from an ability standpoint. You know, if we think about those that have barriers to access, so you know, language can be one of them, access to content can be another one. So I think there's multiple modes to access, and we need to kind of think about who is it we're trying to reach and how is it that we're trying to reach them.
Well, and we're doing that, I mean, under the framework of good consumer outcome too. I think in terms of the financial services sector, there's a duty for us to kind of look after consumer care in that way, and actually you need to be prepared for all audiences in terms of how are they going to consume and need to review and receive information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any examples of any brands and advertisers that have really kind of embraced this and championed it?
So there's some fantastic brands that are doing an incredible job. If you want to look at one of the brands that are doing probably the best practice in the industry at the moment, P&G. So P&G have decided, so there's kind of two versions of audio when we talk about accessibility. There's audio description, where it's a file that's quite clunky, so you would have maybe seen it on the Waitrose or John Lewis ad, where they basically describe what was happening within the ad. P&G are incredible at what we call audio-led storytelling. So you don't have a narrator over the top. They just are able to tell the story through the characters. So if you look at any of their ads, they're very, very good at that. And we're all distracted, right? So having that key message across the audio and across kind of the imagery, I think is really important as well. And obviously the performance shows us that as well.
Yeah, that's great. People seeing it as a creative opportunity and a commercial opportunity, not just like the right thing to do, which is important in itself. But yeah. But
with anything that kind of starts with creative, you're having to factor that in very early in the process, right? You can't have it at the end thinking, oh, well, we should add accessibility.
Yeah.
And that is one of the
It
challenges.
has to be thought up front when you're thinking about the proposition, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The other thing to add, which I think is really fascinating, is so I've been speaking to a lot of like blind and deaf people in the community, and I really find that when speaking to them about advertising, the ones that are doing it well, they are so loyal to. So I'll give an example of Bailey's. Bailey's have this thing called delicious descriptions, where they essentially on their alt text, so if you go on Instagram, you will have an image description which is read out by a screen reader if you're blind.
Yeah.
Bailey's is such a gorgeous drink. Like the way that they advertise it as like a treat is very well done. But they've also taken this to the next level with their image descriptions. They will talk about kind of a glass of Bailey's swirling around in ice with cream and it.
Stop it.
Yes,
I'm ready for
exactly.
one right now.
We need one right now.
But they'll also, so they basically means that when a screen reader reads it out, then a blind user goes, you know what, I want a Bailey's. And so speaking to this woman at a conference the other day, she was like, I'm obsessed with Bailey's. As soon as the Terry's chocolate orange Bailey's launched at Christmas, I was the first one to come out and get it. And so that just shows the loyalty of your consumers, if you do this properly, is immense as well.
And that doesn't just lend itself to accessibility either. That is what consumers all want, right? Consumers want brands that understand them, that can really understand why is it they buy a particular product, or what is it that, that it's solving for them. In this instance, Bailey's is, a treat, and therefore you need to talk about it as a treat, and you need to, make it desirable. That needs to come out in every element of advertising. Understanding the consumer should be at the heart of everything that we do as a marketeer. So, that is marketing. So for it to come at the very end, brand trust, 100%. You believe in the product, you believe in the brand, and that is what compels us to buy.
Yep.
And that is essentially what we're trying to do as marketers, is to get our brands in front of the consumers. And that is our duty as well. And I think along the way, sometimes we forget that and we start chasing numbers. And all of a sudden the consumer takes a back seat. And that's when, editorial creativity takes a back seat as well.
It's really interesting. You were kind of like flirting with, I think you were going to go down an inclusivity route, which is like, I really want to dig into the research that you're doing in this space, because almost like what you're saying is inclusivity in marketing, they're kind of like, they're this one and the same, aren't they, in terms of understanding of individuals, their core needs and how to best serve them. And inclusive marketing kind of feels a little bit like that. Yeah. So why don't you talk about your session and what you've been doing also as a business and how the two come together?
Sure. So, formal introduction, I'm Supriya Dev-Purkayastha, and I'm founder and CEO of Connect Growth, which is essentially a growth consultancy. I've been in the marketing industry for about 25 years.
Never.
And spent majority of that agency side. Through my consulting work, I've worked with brands direct, and then I've also spent a few years ad tech side and media owner side. So I've seen the ecosystem pretty much full circle from every aspect that there is. And I've also had the privilege of kind of chairing, and I'm chairing the ad accessibility task force as well, which really is where I started to think about what is it that we can do. And of course, having seen it from so many different angles, I could understand the agency perspective, and that we are merely doing what our clients are asking us to do. What is it brands are asking us to do, which is essentially effectiveness and efficiency and delivering advertising dollars to consumers that are going to end up buying, because apparently digital is the most measurable and all we want to do is get people to convert. But of course, there are other aspects to marketing. On the flip side, as a media owner and as a ad tech professional, I was looking at how we could get brands to purchase media and engage with our consumers and their end consumers. And it's a really complex web that we've built for ourselves. And I mean a complex web of ad tech and brand safety metrics and other metrics over here. And there's lots of conflict within all of that. And somewhere along the way, the consumer has to come into that at some point, right? And we'd love it to be in the middle and at the centre, but it's not always the case. Because no, we're not all cookies, and we're also it's business at the end of the day. I think if I put my business hat on, I'm going, well, it is business. Everyone is there fighting for survival, and essentially it's about delivering dollars. And so, as humans, we are looking at what can be measured and running with that. Now, if I take a step back and go, I was thinking about accessibility, thinking about my own consumer journeys. I actually was in the market for a car twice in 12 months for various different reasons. And when I was looking for a car, I found that I had expensive taste. I'm going to put it that way. I aspired to faster cars, and I aspired to cars that were a little bit out of my reach, but none of them were advertising to me. Yeah. And I started to think about that, and I started thinking, well, why aren't they advertising to me? So I did a little bit of a test because I had a bit of time on my hands. And I looked at my own profile, kind of, looked at the mosaic and acorn segments that I might fall into. What did the media profile look like for that? What would a media planner think they would need to buy to be able to advertise to me? And I looked at that, and I looked at what I consumed, and I went, whoa, miles apart. Miles and miles apart.
A big disconnect.
Big disconnect. There were only one or two channels which did connect up, but actually when I'm in those channels, I'm not open to advertising because it's social spaces. Going in there because I want to check on family and, look at what they're doing, and I ignore all the ads that are being kind of shown to me. It kind of occurred to me, and I went, well, actually, that's because the media planners are not buying for me. They're buying for who they think I am.
Yeah.
And of course, missing the point.
Typically a demographic bucket or whatever it might be, something quite crude. Yes. I had the good fortune of speaking to a few media owners as well, who weren't core media. I'm going to call them. I'm trying to use my words carefully, because this is not necessarily about diversity. It is about inclusion, yes. Yeah.
But essentially, what is happening is that those that skew towards diverse audiences, marginalised audiences, whatever terminology you want to use, they aren't getting the media dollars. And when I started to have these conversations, I could see that some of it was, being flagged by brand safety. Others were, I can't even get into the SSPs from a programmatic standpoint. Others were, I'm trying to book lunch and learns in with agencies, but they don't have the time. Multiple barriers to access to be able to, deliver ads through these media owners. And the one thing that I do know we need is data points. So I started to look at, well, what is the disparity here?
Yep.
I've managed to get the total, media dollars that we think are going to be spent in 2026, which is like 43 billion. But there's nothing that has tracked whether or not this is reaching diverse audiences.
Yeah. That's
or
really
diverse media owners. In the US there is. So in the US I think they've got it at about 2.5%.
Yep.
So there has been a study, their terminology is slightly different. It's diverse media that's owned by marginalised founders, as opposed to reaching diverse audiences. I think that is a tricky number, yes. But not to even have any data points, I thought was not great.
So this is part of the initiative you've established, is that right?
Yes.
A measurement of the media investment being made within the UK?
Yeah, so looking at the UK in particular, trying to understand what media is reaching diverse audiences. So I've called them untapped audiences because that's essentially what we are. And also understanding from across the ecosystem, from a brand's perspective, agency, ad tech, media owner, SSP, DSP, actually what are the barriers?
Yeah.
And I've spoken to a few ad tech platforms, professionals who have talked about the desire to do this, and have gone as far as, onboarding publications and media owners, and then had the challenge of monetization not reaching them because actually their CPMs are slightly higher, which you'd imagine because they're not getting media investment in the first place. And therefore they are going to be slightly higher, but that we know this, right? This is not new to us. But suddenly, when it comes to buying media, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but as you say, it's untapped and therefore incremental spend and return and value for the industry, right?
And what the research isn't doing is looking at the consumer, because there is tons of research out there on the consumer that talks about how much more. Like the average basket values are greater. The trust factor means that they are, they're more loyal to those brands. So if you are advertising in the media that they're consuming, they're more likely to go and purchase from you, which is what you told with the Bailey story. I don't need to do that research because that research is there.
Yeah.
What is missing is understanding that it's still not reaching the audience because you are buying in the wrong media. So that's the light I'm trying to shine.
But it's also buying the right media, but also serving them with the right content that's going to then...
And I think we're getting better at that, right? So I'm kind of like, I'm seeing better ads. Everything can be better. Let's be clear on that. It's not perfect. It can always be better. But I'm already seeing that brands are on board with representation, with creating our assets in the most inclusive way possible within their means, again with the caveat of it can always be better, but that all fails if you're not reaching the actual consumer it's intended for. And that is dependent on the ecosystem being able to deliver an ad, whether it's an accessible ad. So when we've been talking about, I love the term points of failure, but it's, we were looking at the path from an asset being created that is accessible with alt text or with captions, then being delivered all the way through to a placement that can not only have it delivered but can render it. And that means that every point in that journey needs to enable that. And there are multiple points. Like you've got to have an ad manager that can do that. You need to then have a publisher that can receive it. You need to be able to tell the ad manager that the publisher can receive it. There's multiple layers to it. And it's the same with diverse media, inclusive media.
Why do you think, maybe to both of you, why do you think these are still issues prevalent within our industry? Because we all know that these have been picked up and raised as points of focus. I think about sustainability and DE&I, transparency and brand safety. Our industry, in a broad sense, media, ad tech, martech, we like shiny new things and maybe we kind of move on. Do you think, what's our problem?
I think some of it is we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, okay.
I'll be honest. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And I think it's there's a lot to think about, right? And I'm thinking about this because it's quite close to my heart. I studied speech language therapy, so accessibility has been at the core for me, and communication science has been at the core for me for a very, very long time. That doesn't mean that I thought about it as soon as I came into the industry. No, I got very busy with trying to understand what was going on. I can now put my mind to it, and I now know how to navigate and, what I can do about it. So I don't think I think there's an element of you don't know what you don't know. There's also a time element. And I think there needs to be a movement, which is actually what I'm trying to do, is to try and get the focus around it and get people talking around it.
Yep.
And actually then can we start to get movement. So I'm hoping the research will start to give data points that people can point to. And also through the interviews that I'm conducting, you can see there's a lot of passion in individuals, but they don't have an outlet for it. So if I can give them an outlet to kind of come together and think about it and go, well, what do we do? What is our demand from brands, which is different from our demands from agency, which is different from our requirements from ad tech and SSPs? We might then be able to actually get a shift in the right direction.
I think it's also the complexity of, like, especially in digital, the way like advertising works. Like, you've talked about the workflow and the processes, but when I was at The Guardian, we would have the same conversation with agencies and brands to be like, how much do you reckon you've spent on The Guardian this year? And they'd be like, oh, 20 grand, 30 grand. Be like, you spent 20p. You've spent 20p. But there is that, they don't know how much they're spending and they don't know where they are spending. And so there's another initiative, called the News Alliance, where a lot of very senior industry people have come together to say, hey, we need to be spending more on news. And one of the kind of messages within that is to say, you need to be aware of where you're putting your money, because your money really matters. But also be aware of what you're blocking as well. And we would have the same conversation around kind of shoot and how that would be. Obviously, some articles wouldn't be appropriate, but also if you're talking about football, shooting a football is absolutely fine. And keyword block lists are still being used today, but people just aren't aware because I think the industry is still so complicated.
Or nerve. I mean, it's just a blanket to kind of cover themselves, I think, too, in an element where there's just, I've got it covered, so therefore there's nothing's going to come at me. Kind of.
Can I say something controversial that you can cut out if you want to ask?
It's staying in. Come on.
We're making decisions on where our advertising dollars are going to go. We're pushing them in the same direction. Yeah. We're making the same people rich, and everyone else is falling to the side. You talked about the News Alliance. The News Alliance is all about good journalism and is about protecting consumers actually and people.
Yeah, and
so
real
journalism. So they get the right news, and that we can continue giving quality journalism.
It costs 250 grand per investigative piece of journalism.
Right.
And if you think about the amount of like pieces that have come out, like we were speaking before about like Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, without advertising, those fundamentally would not have existed and they won't exist. It's really hard because it puts more pressure on CMOs, and that is something that needs to be thought about.
But can I now put another layer on that? Multiple media owners, publishers, news outlets out there beyond the Telegraphs and the Independents and the Sun and what have you, who are crucial to the communities that they serve. They also need monetization. They're not getting it, but they are not even part of the News Alliance, for example. Because they don't know about it and they don't understand how to access these points. They're trying and they're trying. But, I was speaking to a local Bangladeshi channel, for example. They're a connection point for the diaspora in keeping closer to the community back home, which means a lot to them. But also what they're trying to do is educate the community as well on, new technology or, regulations and tax and health and so much more. But they're struggling because they need advertising. Majority of their news anchors work for free because they do it for the community.
Yeah.
But actually that community needs funding and advertising so that it can get better journalism, so it can get better quality content for the community, which is actually part of the UK community. They're not separate.
There is a big challenge of short-term ROI. If you cannot prove...
We're all almost
that's 100% what it is.
You've stolen my segue. Yeah. I was going to go with that.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is that we are prioritising ROI and missing actually the impact we're having on the country as a whole.
And I think the measurement topic that is kind of a real red thread that kind of runs through, doing the right thing and accountability and performance that comes out of it kind of flicks into the subjects that you and I are going to be talking about Unlocked as well.
Yeah.
I talk a lot on this podcast about staying ahead of the curve, but there's nothing quite like being in the room where those conversations actually happen. That's why I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about Performance Marketing Unlocked, our flagship conference that's happening in Islington this 3rd and 4th of March. The difference about this event is that it doesn't shy away from the hard questions, as you'll know as a listener to this podcast. The questions like, where does brand end and performance begin? Or how do we actually measure success in an AI-driven world? Attendees will be networking with senior leaders from companies such as Sainsbury's, Estee Lauder, HelloFresh, and many more. Plus, Jamie Lang of Candy Kittens fame is headlining the arena stage to talk about building brands with personality, purpose, and performance. So whether you're a CMO or a head of growth or a marketing manager that covers it all, this is where you find your blueprint for the year ahead. So go to performancemarketingunlocked.com to book your tickets before they run out, and make sure you bring your whole team to tick off that L&D.
So Tony, why don't you kick things off and kind of talk about your topic?
Well, no, so it's a topic close to my heart because it's been something that I've been kind of in the mix of for years at the multiple brands I've worked for. So currently I'm an interim CMO. I focus on marketing transformation. So I go in and help brands figure out where the problem is and how do we help solve kind of in a finite period of time. I'm currently working for Direct Line Group. I've worked for Hargreaves Lansdown. Previous to that, Weight Watchers and the Walt Disney Company, and then agency side, 20 years before that. So I feel like, same as you, kind of full circle, can kind of see both sides to the pressure points that we have. And for, a long time now, the big question is, where do you put your investment, and how do you actually ensure that you've got the right level of investment through brand and performance?
Yeah.
And for me, that conversation or the focus has been short-termism for a really long time, and it's just gotten worse since post-COVID and cost of living crisis, and brands are really scrabbling around trying to figure out how they're meeting quarter by quarter versus how they're meeting year by year. And I think what's happening is an erosion of really true brand health. But I feel like marketers in general, and I throw myself into that mix, it's a hard argument to win sometimes when you've got executive leadership that is so focused on
short-term KPIs.
Yeah. And it's our duty, and I think as a marketing community and CMO network, to really establish how do we bring that back to the table in a way that is going to be seen beyond just the metrics, but just the benefit of brand health and what it does to the nation and the growth that we need in this country so bad.
Yep.
It's beyond just what we have to do as a brand. It's actually serving the nation and well equipping them with really strong, healthy brands that then doesn't have the reliance on performance in the way that we have reliance on it today. It allows for multi-touch attributions at scale in terms of having the right levers to pull and push when we should be spending the money and how much should go into certain channels, and be able to tell authentic, emotional, brand-led storytelling at its heart that then allows for performance to work harder and actually galvanize the interest that you've gotten kind of upper and mid-funnel to then really make it into a true, honest sale that actually delivers brand trust end to end. So that's kind of the ethos of kind of my conversation, and I'm not going to come with all the answers. I think it's more about. I could.
I think that's what the kind of like headline of this session is.
Yeah, I think, but it's a conversation.
Answers.
It's a galvanization of our community, because I feel like we've succumbed to the pressures of short-termism.
Yeah.
How do we pull ourselves out from that trap, and how do we equip ourselves and the leaders around us to actually galvanize the boardrooms to say, we have to speak differently, we have to talk differently, we have to showcase results in a different way.
Why do you think it's still an issue, the silo between brand and performance, or short and long term?
I think it comes down to
Mic drop.
Yeah. Boom.
I'll just leave you guys and come back.
That you'll find out on the 4th of March.
Nice.
Little teaser. No, I think it comes down to not speaking the language of the boardroom, actually really just focusing on the performance. We are in charge of long-term growth, but we're rewarded on short-term results. And I think those two disparities, they fight each other.
And that's the comparability with the inclusivity and addressability or accessibility topics of being able to unite those 2 points, right? Doing the right thing for the longer term and making it count right now.
And I think even if we think that's siloed, there's silos within performance, within brand, within data, within technology. No, there's no one clear owner, really. I think I'm starting to see a shift in terms of the rising of chief growth officers or chief commercial officers that have both sales and marketing and product and marketing sitting together. But until that really fully fuses, not one area owns the sum of the parts. And I think that's where we fall down.
And I think some of the other nuances is actually understanding as a marketeer how we are actually planning out our media and what is missing from that, because we rely on tools that we are not developing, that we are not inputting data into, and we're relying on those to be able to help us plan out. And they are going to plan based on data that we put in on the top of it, which is going to be reflective of the marketing that we've done so far as well. And I think there's quite a bit for us to unpick on there. Consumers change, consumer habits change. How often do we get the chance to actually invest in understanding our consumers? There's a lot of investment that needs to go into marketing that I think at a business level isn't understood.
It's not understood, and I don't think we're great at continuing to articulating that or storytelling that, or we do it once and then we go back to what we do. And I feel like, in terms of just my own experiences and leaders I've worked with, it's like, unless marketing's in the room talking about value, that conversation gets lost. And then the minute we have to think about synergies and optimization, marketing's the first place people think to, because it's an easy way to kind of lop off kind of what you need to kind of save. But we need to be better at repeating the repetition of like the value of what we're delivering, the long-term gain it's going to have. And actually, when we get into the short-term issues, the stronger your brand health is, the better it's going to be able to be quicker to return. You can sustain prices.
It's where you start having a different conversation between cost and investment, right?
And I know on the inclusivity side, some of the challenges are deprecation of cookies or avoidance of cookies or whatever you want to call it, doesn't help because we can't identify the consumer. But at the same time, a lot of those media owners that I'm talking about don't have the tools to be able to tell us, who are their readers, who are their viewers, but also they don't have the case studies to be able to help us to say, well, actually, our advertisers have seen a greater conversion rate, or they've seen better engagement, or they've seen better average order values. That would at least make you stop and think and go, do I test? And that test and learn piece can't even get started because of those missing data points. Right? Because I think as marketeers, we are good at introducing new channels. So we introduced social. When programmatic came along, we introduced programmatic. And none of them worked from the get-go. They needed testing.
Refining and
optimizing. So it's not that we're not used to that. We are. But we do need a bit of help in understanding what is it we are missing. What is it that we should be considering to do? And what are the expectations and optimization cycles that we need to go through? And I think that as marketers, we need a bit of help with.
And holding our nerve on something that we feel it's the mix of the head and the heart. And I think I always the analogy I use is it's as good as our financial planning and what we've been taught with our financial advisors. We have to act as a financial advisor to the boardroom to be like, everything can't be short term. You need to kind of have bets for the long term. It may go up and down, but hold our nerve. Let's kind of like see this through for 12, 18 months to show the worth. It's not going to, your awareness and consideration isn't going to be a tap that gets turned on. You have to slowly build it.
Exactly, and that's what we're doing in the accessibility task force. Is we're actually now looking at getting case studies, doing some causal impact analysis to say, well, actually, with and without accessible ads, what is the difference, so that we can take those to brands and say, look, it does work. We know that there is anecdotal evidence, for example, from consumers in terms of what they buy and panel data. but here's the media data that really demonstrates that accessible ads works.
Yeah,
You know, it does work.
isn't it? We're in
And I think there is, like I said, the ecosystem needs to work together.
Yeah.
Each needs to understand what the other needs, right?
Yeah.
To be able to deliver. And then marketers can do what they want to do. They can do what they want to do. At the moment, I think it is a difficult place to be because there are so many competing demands on marketers for their money. And from a CFO and business perspective, it's like, well, we need you to deliver on this because our business depends on it.
Yeah.
And that's why back to measurement too. I think that's why the cross-channel measurement is so important, because we're good at kind of the performance measurement. We're potentially not so good at how we connect all of the channels together and show the value of them. To your point, it's not silo channel; it's the sum of the parts that actually is going to work for consumer. Consumers don't think channel. No, consumers think experience, and so we have to be anywhere and everywhere our consumers are going to be.
Yeah.
Not to bring it back to me, but to bring it back to me, the session I'm going to be leading, or one of the sessions I'm going to be leading on day 2, has kind of come from a statement that Meta's CMO put out there in the industry, which is he wanted to retire the term and the function performance marketing. I kind of reacted to that and had a conversation with Robin, the editor of PMW, in a sense of like, I think performance and accountability through the right lens is wholly applicable to the whole of marketing, exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
But maybe there's maybe performance marketing in some ways has been taken down like the wrong kind of short-term paths. But the principles of performance marketing should be applied holistically to everything like that.
Yeah.
So I just wonder where you kind of, because our sessions are pretty similar there and they're kind of coming from the same church, right?
Absolutely. I completely agree. Performance is the whole bag, isn't it? It's like their brand is going to lead to...
Brand is performance, right?
It is performance, but it's going to lead to better, lower funnel performance, if we want to kind of categorize it that way.
Yeah.
It's going to make that more efficient. So they go hand in hand. It's one for me too. Yeah, 100%.
Because when you see brand decline is when you actually start to see performance start to struggle.
Well, and then you get questions asked to you. It's like, why are we spending so much on PPC? Or like, well, because we're not spending enough in brand. Yeah. I mean, it's that whole age-old question of, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
It's not performance marketing, it's the performance of marketing.
That's what it is.
Oh, that's
I like
cold.
that.
It's not mine either.
Stolen. You're going to see that on a slide in my deck.
Yeah, it's the performance of it. Yeah.
Do you think we can reconcile these differences between like the fracture that exists between marketing is kind of these two divisions? Because I want to bring them together.
Yeah.
And I think performance is the driver that can bring them together. I think it is that red thread.
It is
performance and measurement.
Yeah, and I think, but it's that repetition of just like you guys are doing. It's the constant argument of like why it matters and why that's going to be kind of the answer for us. So I think platforms are allowing us to think in kind of a more holistic way, because it's not you have to think through the line and not just in pockets. And the way consumers are seeing, you look at the explosion of a TikTok shop, in terms of like where that is going. But then that's not going to work in isolation. You need to have brand awareness, and other channels. So I think it's definitely the way it's going. I think we have to kind of constantly beat the drum of repetition around why it matters, just like we do in marketing. If we stop the conversation or if we turn off a campaign,
it's not just reach, it's frequency.
It's an always on campaign. So yeah.
Do you think CFOs are equipped to measure holistically results? Because like we talk about the performance of marketing, but it essentially does power business performance.
It does, and I think they're focused on bottom line P&L kind of.
That's why I'm asking,
exactly.
Because you're from brand side. I'd love to understand kind of how do you unpick that, because I think that's some of the challenges I've seen is that I see a waterfall, and I see marketing as part of the waterfall. And I'm like, and you don't think it affects anything else?
Well, and that's the thing, and I think it is kind of comes back to the language in the boardroom and talking to them like, what would happen if we didn't invest, and almost kind of like set up a scenario where like if we did not invest, this is where your brand would be and the health of it would be and what we would need to be spending.
And how long would that take?
So there is IPA effectiveness conversation, which I'll kind of get into a little bit more on the day, but we've seen like with within effectiveness case studies that brand health, if you turn the taps off, has a shelf life, and it will constantly depreciate.
Because I've seen it consulting side.
Yeah.
I've seen it, and I've had to have conversations with brands to say you need to turn your brand back on.
Yeah.
Because your entire business is struggling because of it.
Yeah.
Their question was, why is performance not working? I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not performance that's not working.
Yeah.
It's everything that's not working.
The challenge is, though, back to the boardroom, if you're a CEO or if you're a CFO and with the economic kind of downturn we're having, you need to cut budget somewhere.
No, I know.
The marketing budgets are by far the easiest to cut. You can't cut headcount. It takes a long time. You can't cut supply chains because of contracts. It is the easiest budget to cut without massive repercussion, unless as a CMO you were speaking to the boardroom.
But this is where we have to
With
reframe that
language.
conversation,
Yeah.
and that's on our duty to reframe it and think about it as a 3-year contract, like you do with tech suppliers or something like you buy into a period of time where this is going to work, and
I love that. It's a
you're in
business
it.
case.
Yeah, it is.
It's a business case, and I need a 3-year investment that's going to stay there.
Yeah.
And I will prove its worth based on the measurement that we have and the brand health that you'll see off the back of it, and the performance shifts that we're making within lower funnels, so that we're not as reliant, or we're getting stronger conversions and ROIs, healthier LTVs, longer.
I think we've solved it, right? We've solved it. We can move on to world peace and everything else that goes with it. I just wanted to thank you guys for such a great conversation, and listeners, I think what you should have kind of heard or seen if you've been watching on YouTube, I guess, just a diversity of topic and a diversity of thought that you're going to be able to get at Unlocked. So I know I was told not to do the sale, but I want to do the sale. I love this event. It's going to be great. So come along and see Emily, Supriya and Tony and myself at the sessions over the different days. And good luck for your sessions as well, guys.
Great.
Thank
you.
And that concludes this very special episode of the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. A big thank you to our guest host this week, Paul Evans, the founder of Version, and of course to our 3 guests, Emily Roberts, the head of digital at the Responsible Marketing Advisory, Tony Miller, the interim CMO of Direct Line Group, and Supriya Dev-Purkayastha, the founder and CEO of Connect Growth, for joining Paul for that insight-fueled conversation all about the topics that aren't quite getting enough of the spotlight in the world of marketing as perhaps they should be. So I hope you learned as much from that conversation as I did, and are keen to hear more from that awesome foursome at Performance Marketing World Unlocked on the 3rd and 4th of March at the BDC, coming up in a few weeks' time, and only limited tickets available. So make sure you don't miss out. Please, of course, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the show on your podcast platform of choice, and go and show us some love over on social media across YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, and the website at Performance Marketing World. We will be back, of course, in a week's time with a more traditional episode of the podcast. But until then, have an amazing week, and you'll be hearing from me again very shortly. Bye for now.